Hello and welcome to Fae The Source from young Scot. I'm Duncan, and in this series we talk to experts about important topics, taking a close look at the issues that really matter. The first topic we're going to explore is what it means to be a young man in Scotland today. We'll be talking openly about masculinity, the good, the bad and everything in between. This is a safe space for conversation, and today we're joined by Jack Tully. For people kind of listening in for the very first time, they don't know you. They might not know you at all. So would you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and what you actually do?
Yes, my name is Jack. I am originally from London. I moved up to Glasgow when I was 18.
Nice.
I moved up to university and moved up to study theatre studies and public policy, which is a bit of a funky kind of mix.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think when I was a bit younger, I wanted to be an actor.
Okay.
And was part of an academy for about 3 months and realised that everyone was better than I was.
Okay.
Were taking it more seriously.
Okay.
And I think that then I was like, you know what?
Okay.
I'll leave that to someone else.
Yeah. Fair.
But the kind of creative side of things and the kind of politics that I've got and that have been instilled in me from my mum and dad and sort of, from them and my sister, I think I was always intrigued about how I can use the theatre side of things to kind of maybe comment on society and do something kind of political with that. And so, then I graduated and was probably in that position of sort of knowing what I wanted to do, but wasn't quite sure. Yeah. So decided to keep studying. And during that time, I became a member of a community arts or community theatre group called the Community Collective, based at the Citizens Theatre. And by joining that and watching the two people that I've learned probably the most from in my career, Neil and Ellie, do that, I realised that's what I want to do.
Nice.
I want to do what they do.
That was what gave you the spark?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
And that feeling that I left those sessions is how I want people who I run sessions with to feel the same way, to feel that kind of that lift and that just that couple of hours of experiencing something positive and something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that kind of gave me that spark, as you said, and sort of since then I have worked sort of pretty extensively kind of across community arts, community theatre projects, and have been really lucky to have been able to kind of travel around Scotland doing that, travel around the world doing that. Wow. And I kind of feel, I feel really, I'm not a religious person, but I feel really blessed that I've been able to have the experiences that I've had. Yeah. And a lot of my work kind of over the past 4 to 5 years has been very much focused on the criminal justice system, working in prisons. And I think, it's kind of, that's been a long kind of long-term kind of goal.
Absolutely. You can totally, even just listening to that, you can see there's a proper thread through beginning to end from everything. It's not like you've done things when you were younger that haven't really kind of threaded into what you're doing
for
now.
Sure. And I think that I always try and kind of caveat that by saying that I think I feel very lucky that I found that thing when I was younger, and I've been able to follow a path and a trajectory into what that is. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I also know that isn't always so linear for a lot of people, and I think that's why I'm always really kind of, when I am in the workshops and in the work that I do, I'm always kind of like, let's try something out. Yeah. And I understand if you want to come to a couple of sessions and you go, you know what, I really don't fancy it. Yeah. I'm not going to be. I think we should have opportunity to try lots of different things and be able to find that one thing or the two things that you go, that's what I love. That's what I do.
You spray at the wall and see what sticks, and people either choose to stay or not.
Exactly.
I agree.
Exactly.
What do you do now on a kind of weekly basis?
So I am a youth development worker for a third sector organisation called Staff, which is a Scottish Through Care and Aftercare Forum, which is a kind of membership organisation for lots of organisations that are invested in the lives of young people who are care experienced. Yeah. And my focus with them is a kind of a national voice kind of amplifying project called Youth Justice Voices, which is around amplifying voices of young people who are care and justice experienced. and that's based in Aberdeen. So lots of travelling up from Edinburgh, because we kind of realised, or the organisation realised, that a lot of our work we weren't hearing so readily from voices in other parts of the country that weren't the Central Belt, Glasgow, Edinburgh, in and around those areas. And it was a real remains really important for us to kind of recognise that there are lots of voices and opinions and experiences from other parts of the country.
Yeah, that's got to be a lot of work to be able to reach all those parts. But
for sure, and I think there's lots I could talk about that, and that whole project is about really listening to the experiences of those that we come into contact with, amplifying voice, and really kind of understanding how we can listen to try and influence a level of kind of national change in opinions, perspectives, and really trying to, I just think, make things better. Like, kind of, I know that's quite simple and as a concept, but to try and improve the experiences for future generations. I've got a couple of other jobs that I do as well, which I think is probably important for the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on a Thursday, and for the past few years, I've sort of co-led and co-directed Polmont Youth Theatre with the organisation that I work with, Glass Performance. And Polmont Youth Theatre, I think, is a project, with both of the projects that I'm working on at the moment, I'm really proud of. But Polmont Youth Theatre is something that I feel really proud of, because we're the only youth theatre based in a prison.
Wow.
And I think that the spread of the work and the things that we make, I think are pieces of things that I'm really, really proud of. And we work with sort of between 18 and 21, 22-year-olds. And we run a youth theatre every Thursday afternoon. That's
got to be really a learning experience for you as you go.
For sure.
I think you've mentioned, obviously, you work with all sorts through this line of work that you do, but you have also mentioned you work a lot with care experienced kids. Now, tying that into thoughts of masculinity, in your experience with working with care experienced young people specifically, what pressures or expectations around masculinity do you see coming up most often with these people that you work with? I
think it's important to recognise that I'm not care experienced. So I don't want to I don't want to position myself as someone is and is talking on behalf of.
Sure.
I can only talk about the young people that I've worked with, and I think the big thing for me, I think there are two things. There is the performance of masculinity, and I think that there is that pressure. And we've just finished a theatre project with Polmont Youth Theatre called Mentology, and that was all around the experiences of young men kind of exploring their mental health, exploring masculinity. I think some of the big things that we found out, and in the conversations we had during that project, was around I think pressures to be a man, and pressures to be tough, and to be, I think, holding things in and holding things together in a way. I also think that the young men that I have worked with and speak to have talked a lot about becoming men when they're still children.
Okay, yeah, quite early on.
Yeah, and this need, this necessity for them to grow up very quickly, and to be, and still this kind of old-fashioned view of men as breadwinners, as the protectors, as and I think what I find difficult is that you probably asked this question 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but probably the answers would probably still be quite similar.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something for me that really drives me in my work, is about how can we make sure that some of these conversations and some of the things that keep coming up don't, and stop being, and stop coming up again and again and again and reappearing. And
I think that's a very valid point. You said that there's almost a very similarity in that there's a big time difference, but we're still seeing similarity. You might see it less often, but you're still seeing it. Where do you think those come from? How do you think these young people get those ideas from?
It's a good question. I mean, we could probably have a whole podcast around social media and the impact that social media has. I also think for the young people that I work with who are in prison and are in and out of systems that are around discipline, control, punishment, I think some of those ideas are all also, I would say, that are tied to masculinity. You know, you need to be disciplined. You need to be in control. You need to show strength. You know, can't show fear. Like, these are some of the things that I think are compounded by being in prison, by being involved in the criminal justice system, because I think they very much are systems that perpetrate the same ideas that we're trying to move away from, and we're trying to sort of talk about in this conversation, I suppose. I also think there's something in there also about asking for help and finding support. I think it's all well and good that there are projects out there and there are support mechanisms in place, but if you don't feel like they're for you, that's going to be a massive barrier. If you feel like asking for help is a sign of weakness, or is a sign of you don't have your stuff together and you don't have your things together, that's also a massive barrier.
In terms of these characteristics that you've mentioned, have obviously brought into their ideas of being a real man. Do you think stereotypes that you've mentioned so far about what it means to be a real man actually affect the choices that these young people that you're talking about then go and make, especially obviously those already in the justice system and in the systems that you've spoken about?
For sure. I think it's really tricky, because I think that when we talk about a real man, when I think of that, I think about ideas around strength and toughness, as we talked about, provider, control, don't lose face. I think very much in the prison context and in the criminal justice context, I think that hypermasculinity, and I've touched on this already, but that hypermasculinity is just reinforced. It's reinforced by the very nature of the system and very nature of the places and the buildings in which we're in. I also think there's a real danger associated with vulnerability, that I suppose if you're constantly in a state of fear and you're in constantly a state of needing to appear a certain way, there are going to be lots of things which you don't show, you don't talk about, and you keep here and here. And I think that if we look at this from like a kind of a trauma-informed approach as well, like sort of childhood trauma, experiences of trauma are going to further compound your responses and how you respond to things. And that could be through violence, it could be through silence. There are a number of different ways in which that can actuate, but that becomes really difficult, because if you're constantly in a state of holding things in and being and performing strength and performing, I've got this, I've got my stuff together, that's really, really tricky. And I think like it's, I was at a brilliant training program by an organisation called Clean Break, who are based in London, who work with women who have experience of the criminal justice system. And it was it was called kindness training.
Nice.
And it was, it's really, really, really brilliant. But it looks at trauma, and it looks at trauma-informed practice within a kind of creative arts, criminal justice, kind of prisons context. And it was delivered by two facilitators, and one of the women was talking about some of the things that we're talking about trauma, talking about childhood experiences, etc., and all the while, the other facilitator, the other woman, is shaking a bottle of juice, like fizzy juice. She's shaking it and she's shaking it and she's shaking it and she's shaking it. And it was a brilliant metaphor for this idea of, and then she would walk over to her, shall I open it now? Shall I open it now? Shall I open it now? And it was just a really visual thing about, you bottle things up, you hold it, you hold it, you hold it, you hold it, you hold it. At what point then does it explode? And we see that all too often. I think young men have outpourings of emotion through violence, and I think ultimately that's just like a sign that you're not, like, it's a sign that you're holding something so tightly, so close, that when eventually that lid is taken off, it's just an explosion. It's through rage, it's through sadness, it's through anger. Like and that's really, I think that's really difficult. It's really sad. Like it's sad, you know, that cycle is consistent. You know, I think
the way you've portrayed it so far, and that there's so many common routes that people are being placed into, which instill these values, and then basically, like you said, kind of build them into the person that they are, that they bottle things up and they consistently go into that state of being, and then, like you said, explode through sadness, anger, rage. And obviously when the metaphor that you were using just there, which is brilliant, because if you pass somebody, or if you held the bottle in front of somebody and you said, "Shall I open it now?" I imagine all the people that are sat in front of that bottle all go, no, I don't want to be anywhere near that.
For sure.
And it's obviously, on the flip side, if those are people that are the ones that you're trying to educate on the mindset and what they might be like, it's a brilliant shot for them to be like, this could be me. And obviously I don't want to be in front of this, so wow.
For sure.
But I think that's a great metaphor.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I think there's also something for me as well. Like, I find it difficult within the prison context because I think that what I see is the traditional gender roles just being reinforced.
Okay.
And this is a broad statement, but I think it kind of sums up some of the things that I observed and things that I watch, which is you see the majority of officers are men.
Okay.
So you see masculinity, men as the people that are those that discipline, those that control, those that are punishment as well, because that is also what I think the prison system is about. And then on the flip side, you have the youth work teams, the pastoral teams are more weighted towards being more weighted with women in those roles. Okay. And so you see in that flip side, you see gender being sort of performed and gender being set up where you've got men as being strong, disciplined, it's about control, it's about punishment. And on the women's side, you've got love, compassion, empathy. And I think that for me is such a dangerous thing, because why can't men also be full of love, empathy, compassion, collaboration, tenderness, softness, care?
For sure.
Those are things that I think have long been influences and long been threads of my own practice that I think are so important, because I think it offers something slightly different. And I'm also conscious of being a man in a lot of my creative practice and my creative background. Have quite often been a man in like the only man or a couple of men in those spaces. And I also think it's also important to also recognize your masculinity and your voice as a man as something that has dominates politics and wider society. Okay. We do live in a society that I think is fundamentally established by men, set up by men, and works for men. Okay. And we need to find other ways of being, other ways of doing. And I think part of that's also I feel like I kind of have to take some personal responsibility to try and be mindful of the spaces and the places that I'm in, that I interact with, and try and offer like something different, or try and offer, just having that kind of I think that kind of understanding of just, of how you interact with
absolutely
and spaces.
I agree.
Yeah.
And again, the way you've laid it out there, that if that's a thing that you live and breathe throughout your experience, whether it be in prison or in a system, there's only an expectation that you are going to grow into that. But we've obviously talked a lot about maybe the more so harmful aspects or negative aspects of kind of negative masculinity. But if we flip it on its head and we actually try and think about the positive roles and the positive experiences of positive masculinity, are there any experiences of positive masculinity that you think young men, especially obviously the ones that you've worked with and had experience with, should experience in themselves? Yeah,
absolutely. I was going to say something similar. I do think we need to flip on its head. I think often we look at this issue through a lens of like the deficit, like these are like you are doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, when actually, how can we flip it? So it's like, why can't we be, as I said just before, why can't we be full of love and compassion and care? And so I think I'll talk about this through my kind of my theatre, my creative community kind of arts background, because I think that's probably where I see this flip the most.
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
I think that I talked a bit earlier about this kind of intersection between vulnerability and performance. And so I think first and foremost, it is I was going to say it's a terrifying experience going on stage in front of a group of people.
Okay.
Like I feel quite nervous, and there's 2 people in the room. There's me and you,
Yeah.
and there's a bunch of cameras, and I feel myself. I'm like, I am conscious of how I'm sitting. I feel like there is that nerves, and
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I'm so I'm gonna express that my vulnerability of that. So I think that there is a really vulnerable thing performing. I also think that a lot of our work is around personal narratives. Okay. It's about trying to make sense of your experiences, but also, I think importantly, trying to make sense of what your future might look like, and what are the things that excite you, what are the things that you as a young man could go and do that would bring you joy and would give you purpose and bring you a sense of fulfillment and meaning. And I think those are the reason why I say those things is because I think they're so important for people finding purpose, and they're so important for people finding that thing that makes them go. We talked about at the beginning of the conversation, that thing that makes you go, oh, I love this.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that when you find that I think you allows other things to happen. And I'm getting slightly sidetracked, which is often how my brain.
That's okay. I think it's still tied. I hear where your connections have gone.
Yeah. Well, but I think, so I'll go back to the question. So I think I see that kind of vulnerability through performance and through practice. I also think it's important that we do still call out poor behavior.
Okay.
That it's not, I don't believe that we should just stop talking about all the things that toxic masculinity is, because there needs to be accountability. And there needs to be accountability between young men. I think that's a big thing for me, is that we are consistent in our approaches, where it's just groups of boys bantering each other, blah, 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 blah. Hey, for me, some of the worst toxic masculinity I've seen is between young men together in spaces. Yeah. And that has to be called out. Like, there has to be a level of accountability where individuals and people in friendship groups and people at school or whatever it is feel that they can go, that was bang out of order. Yeah. You need to think about what you're saying. You need to think about the implication of the things that you're saying. That's a big thing for me. I also think it's, as I said, my arts practice, it's bringing groups of people together that might know each other, might not know each other. What we celebrate is our difference. You know, we celebrate the fact that we were talking earlier about Edinburgh and Glasgow. We celebrate that's our difference. That's something that makes us different, but it's also, we talked about moving back home or leaving home.
Exactly.
Again, those are things that tie us together. And it's about understanding different perspectives and collaborating. And I think when you understand where people are from and the differences and the things that make them them and the things that they love about themselves and things that make them angry, the things that make them sad, you're collaborating, you're understanding. And I think when you're collaborating with people, it's essentially a practice of empathy, because you're understanding that you're different, and that difference is really important. You know, and that care that when we're working together and we're collaborating and we're making a piece of theatre or making a short film or a podcast, that we're working together to make sure that we can put on the best show possible. Yeah, and that's that kind of ensemble work, I think. I think that part of the reason why I think the kind of Andrew Tate model has worked so well is I think it targets loneliness, and I think it targets isolation. Okay. Because I think it kind of creates a level of kind of personal responsibility. Like, if I act a certain way, I can do this, I can be that. Okay. And I understand how that can be an attractive thing. Okay. But actually, I think that there's so much power in being together. There's so much power in collaboration. And I think I'm also, kind of to your question, I also think I'm really have been inspired and feel very lucky that the male role models that I've had in my life have modelled love and have modelled how to love and how to love myself. Okay. They have modelled what care and compassion looks like. Okay. But they've also modelled how you can do that whilst also being strong.
Yeah.
And also sort of being mindful of like, not discipline, but being held to an account, like being held to account and being held to a standard of who I am, really. I think, if that makes sense. And I think that, as I've said, I'm really keen that I continue to model those things and model that within our work, and within the work that I do, because I think that we all have a responsibility. This isn't something that just falls on young men to try and fix. I think it falls on all of society to fix. You know? And that's why I sort of mentioned the isolation and purpose and drive and things like that, because I think that if there are lots of opportunities for young men to be in work and to find the thing that allows them to study or to get into, I think that just gives, I think that breeds a kind of lightness. It breeds that further opportunity, really, that I think,
I see that.
You can, I'm trying to,
I think there's I mean, you've mentioned a lot there, and I'm kind of picking it apart with just trying to take away real values specifically from the kind of list that you've made there. You've spoken a lot about almost cooperation and sharing between men with each other, and how isolation can lead you maybe down a slightly more altered pathway. And obviously, I think, like you said, the compassion, the sharing, holding accountability is different from discipline in the way that, like you've said, individual kind of loneliness discipline is very much different from accountability that's shared through men with each other. And I would argue it's also much more easier to take on. Now, again, I think you have dripped in a kind of answers to this, so you might just have to build up on top of that. But when we talk about positive role models, we mentioned a lot about what is necessarily wrong within that space. But what do you think we need more of within positive role models to make them as good as they are? You've mentioned compassion, you've mentioned the cooperation and the accountability. But is there anything else for these positive role models that you think they need?
I think it's a really important question, because I think that they're probably going to differ from person to person. Yeah. And I think that especially with my work within working with young people who are carrying justice experience, I think often they can what's the word, like, we put them into silos. So we'll say, like, this is the view of X, this is the view of Y. And actually, we need to really take a really individualistic or individualized, I'm not sure which one is, an individualized approach to how we support young men, and how we support boys, but how we support everyone. I think that there needs to be lots more opportunity. I'm thinking about the visibility, of male role models, whether that be in school, whether that be across a number of different areas. I'm finding this question a bit more difficult, actually.
That's very valid. I think it's you kind of have answered it in yourself, so it's fully okay for us to have spoken about that already, because you've really focused on, when you were answering before, you were speaking very much upon the kind of individualized, the differences between the good and the bad that we've spoken about, and obviously the shared accountability, the compassion, the kind of working together in cooperation.
Sorry, just as you're kind of summing up, and I'm pleased that you're able to sum up, because it's just making sense of the things that I've already said. I think there's also something massive about being role models to each other, and I think that's something that I see a lot in group work, is that we start to be inspired by each other. We start to experience and we start to understand, and that our peers become our role models. That's also really, really important. And I think that's some of the things that we talk a lot about in our creative practice, is that we see groups of young people who might be very, very different working together, and then supporting each other and checking in on each other. I think showing that love and showing that the things that I've talked about to each other, I think that's a really, really, really important thing. I also think that I don't know if we see enough this idea around like a positive male role model.
Okay.
I don't know if we see enough of that in our media. I don't know if we can see enough of that modeled by people in power. I don't think we see enough of that across various levels of the state, of the systems in which we interact with
and consume.
and consume. I think, as I said at the start, I think we do live in a society that was designed by men, is for men, and I think we need to sort of I'm trying to think of the right word. Like, we need to kind of collapse that. We need to kind of interrogate why that is.
Alter and maybe move on.
For sure. And again, that's why I talk about difference, and that's why I talk about that celebration of differences. I think because if it's the same people speaking it, it's the same voices, and it's the same experiences, how do we learn what other people, how do we learn what other experiences are like? How do we provide other opportunities and other spaces where we are listening to what makes us different, and we're listening to other points of view? And that's why as I said, my work with Youth Justice Voices project is really important, because I think it's actually trying to share and amplify voices that are not often heard.
Okay.
And I think whether they're heard or not, being listened to is another thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I also find a lot with my work within the justice system. I speak with a lot of young men who have been failed, because I think it's a failure of us as a society that we have and imprison so many people full stop, and we also imprison so many young people full stop. Because surely there are other things that young people should be doing, could be doing, to reach their full potential. And I think that's...
Especially at those younger ages as well, where you would argue they are the most impressionable stage of their whole life.
And I also think, to kind of come back to also your question, I also think we need to be starting this... We need to be having these conversations way younger. Like, we should be in primary school. The positive male role models should be in primary schools. They should be across a number of different levels. And I think being able to access other services, whether it be a theatre group, whether it be football, whether it be music or anything, just having interactions with other adults, with other men, who might model a different version of masculinity, might model a different way of living, just allows your mind to be, just to think about, imagine something different, alternative futures, you know?
I agree. And maybe obviously they shouldn't necessarily be for the young people that are experiencing, they maybe shouldn't be labelled as a positive role model. It should be something they should just naturally experience, like you said. Within the space, whatever space they go into, 100%. They experience it. They don't think anything else of it. But from an outside perspective, and especially holistically downwards, you know that they're being, like you said, positively, masculinely impressioned. Now, this might be a little bit of a difficult one for you, because you've spoken again about many things that you think are valuable and positive, and some of them you could choose any of these as a step for what I'm about to say. But if you could design one simple step for communities, schools or families to kind of encourage positive masculinity, what would it be? What would you put in place?
I think the tricky thing there about the question, I think, is the thing that you said about it's simple, like a simple thing.
Yeah, it's never simple, I guess.
Never simple. And I also think that see, you've got me. It's a good question. It's a good question. I think one of the things that I can reflect on with the piece of performance mentology that we made, and that was in collaboration with a research project called Men Minds. And so we worked together, and they shared some of their research with us. And one of the big things, and I don't think what I'm about to say is I don't think is a radical thing, and I don't think it's something that other people have not said.
Okay.
But the biggest thing that the group of young people that we worked with, what they were saying is that we don't feel like we have a space where we can actually be honest with opening up and how we're feeling. Okay. And one of the questions I asked was, well, why do you think that is?
Yeah.
And one of the young men that I worked with, he said the thing is, if someone opened up first, I would say it.
Okay.
And I was like,
that's really interesting.
Okay, so what, like, okay, tell me more. And he said, well, I just don't feel like I could be the first one to say. And okay, so that again ties into a lot of the things that we've said, you know, already about this idea of masculinity, bottling things up, holding things up. But what they were then talking about was, is there a space for us in which we can facilitate our conversations ourselves, where maybe we start to see like a different modeling of behavior, you know, and they were really like beautifully and I think tragically articulate about that, because I think they're talking about an awareness of not being able to do something and relying on someone else to make the first move and relying on someone else to make the first, to be vulnerable. Yeah.
To risk it.
To risk it, exactly. I think risk is a really good word there. So I think that would be a one thing. But what's important is that conversation isn't just of course that conversation is important for those young men around that table, but how can we open that up where actually the things that they're talking about and their experiences are taken seriously by those within the prison? Because I think a lot of the things that the young men were saying about their experience of being in prison are not great. I think that there is a lot of listening the criminal justice system could do. I also think I could open up a big conversation around that and around abolition and expanding that, but that's probably another longer form podcast and but I also think that if boys and young men can have opportunities to have access to opportunity and access to experiences that broaden horizons and provide them with, I think, opportunity to actually get into meaningful employment, and I've talked about this already, but I do think it's so important, like having something that you believe in and that you're working towards and you feel that you feel value of your contribution, I think is so important to actually widening up and broadening what's possible and thinking about what can be different.
The next steps.
And I think that's something that I really see, and I feel like in the show that I was in, that we made, I was in the show and I really get terrible stage fright and all these and I'm trying to model the things that I've talked about and I'm behind the stage going, oh my God.
You're doing what they're doing.
I'm doing what they're doing and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't go on stage. I'm not going on stage. I can't do it. And then them going, no, you've got this. You can do this.
Wow.
Like, you should be, and they always make fun of me by going, but you should be the one that's telling us that. And I'm like, well,
how the turns of tables.
Yeah, exactly. And that vulnerability, I think, is something that I've talked about a lot. And so I think also been able to model that. And I think that's a long-winded, and I don't know how much I've said that actually fully answers your question there, because I think that I've tried to articulate my answer to that question, both within the small scale of what I think is possible to actually make a difference to young people in that moment in time. But I also think there are big things that we can do systemically and societally that I think actually provide everyone, all children and young people, with opportunities to feel like they can be the best versions of themselves. Absolutely. And they can be contributing to society and they feel valued and they feel loved. And I also think then they can do the same to others. If you see value and you feel love and you feel that, then I think I hope you'd be able to love and offer care and compassion to others. And I think sometimes you need to be able to experience that yourself to then be able to model that to others. You know, and I think love and care is a big thing for me in in what I do, because I think that, I think sometimes there's, as we've talked about, there's can be an absence of that. And
sure.
I really try and create spaces that I feel like people can hopefully feel valued and
Absolutely.
loved and cared for. And
Definitely, it comes across as a strong theme in everything you talk about, which is really good because you can see how passionate you are. You definitely answered my question, by the way,
good,
just to let you know.
good.
Especially, I think when you were talking about the example of the young people kind of speaking out that a barrier is they don't want to be the first person to come out and say it, and what steps you can put in place to facilitate that and make sure that they don't feel that way. That is in itself is a brilliant step. And also the example that you gave about being you putting yourself out on the vulnerable side and showing them that it's okay to be vulnerable and look like a mess before you go on stage. But honestly, in terms of relatability, they will see it within you, and like you said, within positive role models, it's a brilliant opportunity for them to see it right there and then.
I mean,
and learn from it.
Yeah, I just think that for me is I know I've talked about myself in that example, but I think that kind of being able to show vulnerability and being able to show that you aren't holding things together and you aren't like in that moment strong or whatever, actually I think there's great strength in that. And I think that I've seen that firsthand within the young people that I've worked with who talk about that and go, this is so not something I could do or wanted to do or feel like it was for me.
Yep.
And then they're doing it and it is for them and they're brilliant at it and they're doing all the things that we've talked about, and so.
It's very good. And to be honest, I just want to say how well you've articulated everything that we've spoken about so far. It's not an easy thing to speak about, especially when you're speaking about thoughts and feelings, and putting it into words is never easy. But you really well articulated yourself today. I appreciate
you saying that.
Specifically looking at the young people that you deal with and you might come into contact. For anybody out there listening that's a young individual who feels maybe stuck or under pressure, what advice might you give to them?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I think it's important to say that, and we talk about it a lot, but I think being able to reach out to someone, whether it be a friend, whether it be a parent or a carer or a teacher, I think just by beginning a conversation, I think you'd be surprised at feeling what that pressure, that relinquishing of pressure.
Yeah.
I really do think that that's something that I really try and provide opportunities for within my creative practice, that there are opportunities for check-ins and one-on-ones and opportunities just to go, I'm struggling with this a little bit.
Okay.
And I also understand that isn't always easy, I also think for me, there's something about community and there's something about being in spaces and places of collaboration, of being together, My work, as I've said, is a creative practice and it's about community building. I think there is great power in being part of something where you feel that you are cared for and you are caring for others. And I also think within that there is something that spaces that like that allow you to for that some of the pressure that we've been talking about to kind of to be relinquished and to fall away. But I also think we should never underestimate the power of someone going, "How's it going? Are you like how are you?" And I know we talk about that a lot.
I like the way how you've targeted a lot of things you've said to young people, but we've also spoken about things that kind of males do and guys do when they get a little bit older, is that I think as you grow older, it does become more natural to ask how people are, but actually ask. It's not just a case of how are you. It's actually, you might ask it once and you follow it up with, okay, right, actually, how are you? And that becomes a conversation and you end up opening up. But you don't necessarily see that with young people. You don't necessarily see that actually you ask the question, they say they're okay. And I guess maybe at that age, you don't think to follow up and ask again, but maybe what's your thoughts and feelings on that as a thing that young people might be able to do in terms of, you're saying, asking young people what should they do if they're feeling stuck or kind of restricted, but is it a case of speaking out, or are you just Are you just pitching it more as just ask your friends how they are?
Yeah.
Like, actually ask how they are.
I think it's probably a combination of a few things that you said. I think we need to be asking more questions.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think we need to be asking questions that are probably beyond surface level.
Yeah.
And I also think there's an important thing you said about listening, is that there is a difference between like, okay, I've asked you how you are and I'm hearing, okay, cool, right, we'll move on.
We'll move on.
There is a difference between you going, I'm okay. Okay, maybe there's more there. And I think it's also, I've talked a lot about all these different things, that we've been talking about and modeling, but also like that is something that I also find difficult. I also think it's going to be the case for loads of different people, that actually opening up, saying the first thing, that's for me sometimes is a challenge that I find.
Absolutely.
Is getting to the place, I know that I want to say something. How do I start that conversation? How do I get into that,
Yeah.
And so that like, I really appreciate that that's a difficult and that is a challenge.
Absolutely.
But I think really, really importantly is that I think that once you start and you're in a space and you're in a place where you feel safe to do that, I think you'll be surprised that then that breath,
absolutely,
that kind of being able to take a jacket off, being able to take the thing that feels like it's waiting on you.
Absolutely. I would agree with you there that I don't know about yourself, maybe you will agree, but I've definitely experienced the carrying a burden of things that are really troubling me to whatever extent, and eventually a conversation ends up happening and it is a massive weight off your shoulders for whatever reason. But it's definitely linked to vulnerability. It's definitely linked to not wanting to, okay, you're a close friend of mine, I don't want to burden you with all the things that I'm currently struggling with. But when it does end up happening and you realize that maybe they are actually really wanting to know more, that feeling is so positive, positive.
And I also think there's something in there about the various places and spaces that which we, like mindfulness, that actually taking part in meaningful activity that doesn't just keep you contained within this thing's really stressful, this thing's really hard, because and for a lot of young people there's going to be great stress and there's going to be great pressure with the society in which we live in. But there are places, and we were talking about playing fives earlier, we were talking about playing football, and I know that for me, it might look like I'm having a terrible time when I'm playing, but that feeling after that kind of lift, I think I've seen it with the young men that I work with in the theatre group. I talk about that with other young people, that we've just gone for some food or we've just gone for a coffee, that just those little moments, those spaces where you can just, I think that being able to be honest and being able to be vulnerable in that moment, and I really think that that's one thing that I really, really kind of will stress and really, really be hopeful for, that that you should, like, I hope that you should feel comfortable to be able to reach out and to start that. But I also think we have a responsibility to make sure that we are asking questions of those around us and those people that we love and we care for, to also go out and listen properly and model the things that we've talked about by also going, are you all right? And not interrogating, but diving a little bit deeper. Offer someone an opportunity to go for dinner, go for a coffee, go for a walk, just providing those more spaces where people can, and it might take someone 5 coffees, not at the same time, because you'd be full of energy, but across a period of time, hypothetically, to feel comfortable to open up and to share. And it's not just about a one-time thing. It's modeling behavior all the time, not just some of the time.
The bottom line being there effectively is give more people more opportunities and situations where they can speak more.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Fundamental, I think it was your it was the way that you were summing up. It allowed me to stay focused. Sometimes I think I need that.
But I mean, that's what we're here for. I think I could definitely sit here and listen to you all day. But as we wrap things up, it's definitely time for me to say thank you very much for watching Fae The Source. If today's chat got you thinking, or you're looking for advice or support, head to young.scot/I feel for more resources. That's young.scot/AYE feel, because we're Scottish. You can also follow the link down in the description somewhere down below, which you'll be able to find. And if you want to keep the conversation going, hit subscribe and join us next time. Until then, take care of yourself and those around you. And from me, Jack, I say thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.